Hello, welcome to another episode of Conversion Disorder, where we talk about the stuff happening in the marketing world, and there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good understatement to kick things off. Um, it's this is definitely one of those things also where a lot of the aspects that are happening, usually it's like around sectors or around certain things. This is more broad. And it's definitely interesting because there are more concepts that are influencing as well as individual stuff like legal or other stuff that we would normally go over. But where do you want to kick it off?
Well, I think there's a thread that's common through everything we're talking about today, which comes from, call it, the last month of news. Um, but the thread is going to be the single point of failure, right? That affects either affiliate folks who are just too focused on a single thing, like I only send this one offer or I only use this one channel.
Yep.
And that's okay, right? As long as it's working for you, up until it's not okay, because the whole table got flipped and you didn't have another place where you had a strong footing, where you had a strong base to roll over to. And so there's some amount of scrambling that we see, right? So, but let's get into the examples. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any specific you want to kick things off with, or you want me to just make one up?
Well, let's start from the big thing, right? Which is federal government's been doing a lot of hand wringing around the spending of money on renewable energy, in particular, all those solar incentives and all those things, right, that came from the previous administration. Those are no longer in vogue. So this means that um, there's just the money for solar, for example, is drying up, and that's happening across multiple regions, multiple states. For marketers, though, it just means that the government regulation risk, right, resulted in really their favorite offer if they were doing a lot of solar, right? A lot of people were suddenly disappearing. And in this case, we've seen some of the largest buyers disappear over the last, call it, 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that has some downstream effects.
Yeah, and the bigger downstream effect is, at least as far as the people I've talked to, and granted, we have a little tunnel vision, at least on my side for this, because it's mainly marketers, it's not a lot of installers, but I do know a couple. And it's interesting to see why they think they're going under, or why they think that they weren't able to continue. Because most of them like to maintain, like, now, disclaimer, everyone maintains this, right? I didn't see it coming. There's no way I could have done anything differently. It always shows up out of nowhere. But like, some of them legitimately had no idea until like 2 weeks before they were told, oh, the $80,000 we owe you. Sorry. And it could be anything from, they got their money late, whatever it is. There's always an external factor that can be input into these scenarios. And the fun part is realizing that no matter how you do your job, you cannot stop that external factor and it still affects you. So a lot of these guys that are doing lead gen, for example, some of them partner with installers, other ones just sell the leads to installers.
Right.
Either way, the installer now doesn't have a cash flow because the person that's getting the rebates from that, or maybe it was them directly, or maybe they got it a different way, all of a sudden you're going from 100% to, let's say, 60%, or in some cases 0, or in some cases 40. Either way, if
Yeah.
you're losing 40% of the rebate or 40% of whatever comes back, you can most likely expect to lose about the same on, let's call it, the rewards of your marketing, or the rewards of the monetization as a result of your marketing. And that trickles downstream a lot, especially when people realize that are out of solar, that like the marketing data for homeowners they've been getting is actually from solar, from like declines or whatever it is. And all of a sudden that data just stops or it becomes more expensive. So there's a lot of downstream effects that impact a lot of these parties, and they don't really realize that it's even in the mix to begin with. And it's really bad when you don't realize like what depends on what all the way down chain.
Right. So just to recap, the first domino was really the government side changes affects supply chain, affects the actual installers who are often the buyers, and of course all the aggregators for those. And in a way, that's rippling over to the home services vertical as well. It may not. It just means that there's some turmoil. It doesn't mean that the Windows business is still fine, the roofing business is still fine,
Right.
but the source of records and the amount of flow is fluctuating, and some folks were kind of caught unawares. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
And
All right. So from federal government, let's head south to Texas, where
yep.
Texas SB 140 has been causing some concern. Now, this is a newly proposed regulation. At a very high level, it is looking at who is doing phone and who is sending text. And it is most onerous because it requires everybody who's going to touch a Texan in one way or another, or Texas resident in one way or another, to register with the state. There's a fee, and there's also a bond that you must post as part of that. You must also identify yourself and your business in a very open way, right? In order to do business, and then you might be okay? Question marks, maybe, right? Because it is new, which means that usually you don't actually know how it's going to go, how it applies, what the details are, until there's some settled case law, which being new means that there's no case yet, but I expect more
Yeah.
to see.
And let's hope that no one we know is the one that becomes the example of the case law as it gets set.
Right.
Yeah, the interesting thing was I was having deja vu as I was reading it, and I'm just looking at it going, this sounds awfully like Castle for the email laws for Canada. I'm like, so let me get this straight. I can use all the information available to me to see whether or not that person is in Texas, right? They're visiting their mom, they're a geo IP in Nevada, and then they're also like registering with the area code from here, and then they do something else. But if I'm in an industry where I'm not asking for physical address,
Right.
I don't know how I would actually be able to confirm whether or not I need that level of consent for that person. And keep in mind, too, I even have a hard time saying that this is consent because it's technically, in my mind, more like licensing. It's more like you already have the consent, but by the way, that's not pertinent to this conversation. I just want to know whether or not you are allowed to even take advantage of that consent for this person. That's how I see this. It's more like CCPA in a way, if you think about it, except it's
Right.
not reaction, it's more proactive. But I think the other main part, and I'll kind of like end my ramble about this, but this is one of the bigger parts, is that it also enables the regular consumer to actually take action against you instead of saying, hey, state of Texas, I would really like you guys to go after this guy. And they're like, dude, I deal with like murderers. You think I have time to deal with this guy? But now they can do it. An individual can actually use that to their advantage. And that's a big difference.
Right. And to be fair, most likely, like we saw with California and other places, it'll be a group of lawyers who understand that they can get individuals to do this now, and then they will start doing whatever they do, right?
Yep.
Not naming any names, but I definitely saw some kind of honeypot type activity right in the past, and there's a bit of that kind of stuff that could happen, right? So the combination of these shenanigans and the uncertainty without having any case law settled means that this is dicey waters for marketers. So we've definitely heard of people who are going to stop marketing to Texas at all. And that should cover you for a lot of things, but the penalty is quite large per infraction. I believe it's like 10,000. And the law lets them, come at you on the individual basis, which means that it might be a person traveling, right? Maybe they're outside of the geo, and
Yep.
if you don't know anything else about them, maybe you end up going for somebody, because my phone number area code is from where I lived like 20 years ago, right? So it's not exactly guaranteed to be accurate 100%, right? So there's some real challenges there for the folks who are not doing active geofencing data. I also noticed that they were nice enough to exempt public companies, so the larger high end of the spectrum don't have to worry about any of this stuff. It's just these highly resourced little companies, right, that they're going
Did you see the other one? And again, maybe I'm just misremembering, but I'm pretty sure there was also an exemption in there for appointment setters, as long as the end result ended up in a physical meeting within Texas.
right.
It was something like that. And I remember going like, well, it's good to know that like the mass cold calling outreach is still completely fine with it. But yeah, it's like, oh man, it's like, so B2B is cool, B2C not. Got it. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless the mass calling ends up with an appointment right at like I don't know, the Apple Store or something.
And see, that's where I think that's going to be the case law. That's going to be it's going to be that, or it's going to be like the dude left Texas, didn't change his license yet. So he's technically still a resident, but he had a different area code, different address, and then signed up to like move his Comcast. And then he's like, I haven't moved yet. And he gets like that text like that. That is going to be the interesting one. Again, maybe of course, they're going to change it. They're going to make it more specific over time.
Mhm.
But like until then, usually it's not until there's case law and then it gets more specific. But yeah, it's very, in my mind, open-ended. But to be fair, I think that was the intent so that they could then file it down after. They wanted a wide, a wide reach, let's say.
Yeah. We'll see. It feels a little gerrymandered more than a wide reach, right? Because it's
it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, especially if, for example, certain industries end up with a little bit more lax enforcement and other industries don't, like insurance, for example, like stuff like that. Sometimes it's more acceptable in certain things and not in others. But as much as I hate to use the age-old adage, time will tell, and we will see what happens. But let's just hope that it doesn't set a precedent that then enables another worse precedent after that. But we'll see. That's what the courts are for.
Yeah, I haven't even looked it up, but I'm almost positive that political fundraising will also be exempted for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, if not, someone will watch this, have the idea, and go, "Damn, we forgot to spell that out." So yeah, I'm sure it'll end up in there.
Yeah. All right. So jumping to other legal related news, we've noticed through our customers, through the marketers that we work with, a lot of reports that mass tort was drying up. And at first we thought maybe some kind of weird regulatory thing, but just looking at it, it seems to be a coincidence. It seems that at least 6 major buyers in the mass tort category, covering talcum powder, hair relaxer, firefighter foam, hernia mesh, Roundup, rideshare. A lot of them have just had their budgets cap out, and or perhaps they're just going to court, actually, right? Because that is ultimately where they were headed. So yeah, so that could just be happening, or they're at the end of their expiration and now they're just going to pay out and be done with it. Yeah, so business risk, pure classic business risk.
Yeah. And like tort's one of those fun ones. You have so many people that know tort so well, but they like never learned the understanding of like how the court case actually proceeds, or like, the stages you go through. And then like, oh, by the way, we have this and it's certified. Now we need to get all the people. And they're like, this could go on forever. You'd be like, I hope not. Because if it goes on forever, no one gets paid. Like we need to get this like dialed in. But that's now take that across all the other people that base their entire marketing, let's call it personas, on these kinds of things, and then have 3 out of the 5 that they run full time all settle or drop within like 2 months. Yeah, it's going to be impactful. And that's going to impact a lot of the budgets and from both sides, right? The buyers and from the media buyers. So some sources might get a little cheaper, which would be nice, but other ones will actually get more expensive because now they're losing the budget. And I know a lot of like class action and tort in general, like I know subprime, like Path, that's a lot of those on ancillary. And like, there's enough volume, they won't really feel a difference, but it does happen. And there will be a decent amount until they figure out what the next one is, and the next one gets certified or whatever it is.
Yeah. One bright spot there, though, I saw that our friends at Addicted Affiliate have a new mass tort offer, which is related to Roblox. So
Yep.
if your kids have it on your credit card, it's time to take a look at that. So that might be a good offer that covers a nice wide swath of Americans.
Exactly. And then when they start Googling stuff to tell you how it's not real and there's not a problem, just show them the lander and all of the stuff right there. And then you can opt in live. It'll be perfect. Yeah, no, I've been seeing a lot more on the gaming side, like, because rideshare was good for a bit, and then it kind of got bigger. Then rideshare started bridging into other stuff, and then I won't say those words on here, but then basically it just kind of kept going, and now it's gaming. It's like, is your kid spending, was it like 2 hours a day or something on gaming? It's like, did you know that that's an addiction? I'm like, I used to do 6 like after school. So like, can I retroactively get some money from this? That'd be great. But like a lot of those, it's so funny to see how stuff is shifting on that side when it was like
Yeah.
all pharma all day, everything. And now it's like gaming violence, mental health with this in addition to, and it's weird to see so many shifting that direction now, but it makes complete sense given legal.
Yeah, well, also gaming is no longer purely just the publisher and the game designer making money, right? Now there's advertising, there's product placement, there's all these sorts of insertions, and Roblox is sort of a marketplace, right? There's a couple of
Yep.
these like Fortnite and Roblox, which are entire marketplaces where other people can build content on that platform. And now you have the possibility of other people, right?
Yep.
And people are the source of all interesting things. So
No, understand another day.
yeah, yeah, that is where it's going to go. All right,
Yeah.
let's bring it back to this idea of our friends with the single point of failure, right? So aside from the
Yep.
last tort guys who can go find one new offer, cool, but you're still standing on just one leg, right? You're you
See,
still have
that's
point of failure.
yeah. So the fun thing is I could technically just answer this in 7 different tiers by saying the same thing over and over again, which is zoom out and then zoom out again and then keep zooming out. Because if you start with targeting too narrow, you're not going to have any other place to pivot. But if you understand the mentality of the person, for example, that is signing up for this mass tort or that mass tort, or maybe both, maybe you have someone on both that this is applicable, that's now targetable. And that is, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that as you can find more people with that intent to also try to help those people find that. So it's knowing that kind of information helps, but too many people focus in on the intent only. It's like, did you take this medication? You may qualify. It's not like what prompted that person to go, I wonder if I could get some money from X or Y or Z or whatever it is. And that's what a lot of these guys have in common, and girls, of course. But the main thing is if you don't zoom out enough, you don't even know that there are cross sells because you're not looking at other things at all. You're just looking at your core. So with all of these, it all comes down to, are they asking because they want, let's say revenge over a problem that happened? Do they ask because they want money? Do they ask because they want this or that? That's all motivation, and that is all targetable. But does it apply? And that's what the testing is, right? Just because they take this med doesn't mean they take that. But that's something like tort, right? And stuff like, let's say debt, it's much easier because subprime is much more easily cross-sellable. But on tort, yeah, it's harder, but it's not hard. You just got to figure out how you're getting these people and what they're actually responding to. Because it's not Roblox. It's not Roblox. It's not that word. It's my son does this, my daughter does that. It's I see that. But what allowed them to get onto the page that made them see that ad in the first place? That's what really is opening up your demos.
Yeah. So opening up your demos, exploring your audience, right? Understanding what their interests are, right? That really is one of the key takeaways. Because if you're a single point of failure business, while it's working, please take some time to explore your audience, right? Figure out what other things might cross sell to them. So just thinking from our clients who do this stuff, there are folks who might move the ad. So they might originally have sent, an email right to the offer. So move the offer to a landing page, right? That way they're clicking on the email in a more generic message. The links there are lined up with your sending domain. That's always helpful, right? On the landing page, present the advertiser's offer. And then after that offer is clicked, set up an offer wall after that with different vertical offers that are from other things entirely. And you're not going to get everybody there, right? But maybe 30%, 20% of your audience will see that pop under. And then when they're done engaging with the original offer and paying you that money, you might get some additional revenue. But more importantly, you start getting a sense of your audience. Oh, look, my Roblox folks are also keenly interested in European vacations or something, right? You're not going to know, right, unless you do that exploration and find out. And that is one of the ways to begin diversifying and getting into, maybe I should build a vertical for that, right? Or maybe I should at least go get a first party registration and start build another brand for that and start mailing or sending from that particular brand, right? Um, Same thing for the folks with the SMS side of things. I'm sure they've already thought of this, but diversify right into other channels so that if you can't text the Texans anymore, then you can at least email them or something else, right? To try and make up for that, because Texas is a huge state, massive population, and very engaged in a lot of types of offers. It made up a overlarge portion of a lot of people's audience, right? So it is a critical thing to explore how your access to this channel is closed off. Maybe let's start media buying, right? Or let's start doing something different.
Yep. No, I mean, obviously, we always say like evolve or die. Like, you need to be able to be a little agile. You need to be able to move. The other thing, and I'll throw this in as one of my little like closers, that's an idea that I usually try to instill in people for media buying. And that's the aspect of just because you know the intent doesn't mean you know why the intent is there. So like just because you're buying traffic, let's say from Facebook, right? Facebook, people could be on Facebook for anything. They could had a really crappy day. They're on Facebook to look at reels. They could have had a great day and they're looking at it to, catch up with family, whatever it is.
Sure.
But Google Display or something like that, where you can actually see the referrer and go in and go, oh, they were reading a guide on how to fix their credit score. And then they clicked on your offer. Think about what, let's call the general people that are on that page are thinking, and then think about what else may apply after your core product. Because again, you've already bought them, you've already brought them in. But if you know that the framing on, like, let's call it your credit repair business is based on the fact that they're in debt, then maybe it's not just credit repair. Maybe it's they're behind on payments. And you know what would really help? Not being behind on payments. So like there's a lot of stuff there that you can read in by seeing what is the source of your source. Right. But at the same time, don't go too deep, because you'll just keep going around and around and around, and you'll figure out that it never stops because brokers just keep selling the same click to every other broker that eventually sells it to you. So just look one or two hops, nothing more. Otherwise it's way too much data and it won't be, let's call it attributable properly.
Right. Well, I mean, I always think, eat that territory, right? Like claim that one hop first, and then once it's showing returns, once it's showing you the reason why you should do more, right?
Yep.
Then you've earned the time and the space and the headroom to go enjoy that next hop, right? So
exactly.
All right, cool. I think that about does it for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will be back next week. See you later.
Talk soon.